I have some vague memories of probably being injected. I'm not sure if it's just a vague memory or if it actually happened, but definitely going to the medical office of this type was a memory. And I asked my mother about it, and she said, I never took you to any such office. You were never examined. And this occurred more than once. It occurred at least three times, twice in an office on the first floor of this house, and once on the second floor of this house, being led by the same woman and meeting the same doctor and nurse in that type of environment and being examined.
And in today's episode, we cover a lot of cases from Norway I've never heard. And not only have I never heard, but the details of these cases, I've never heard anything like it.
Yeah, I'm quite concerned about this. You know, to the extent to which I believe that the Skywatcher people are engaged in artificially luring in some of the UFOs, that they've developed some kind of a technology that masks as a telepathic solicitation to come. You know, like a regular person or a group of people can reach out telepathically and solicit the UFO to come so they can have a direct contact experience with them. And that the Skywatcher people are mimicking that they've developed something they call the dog whistle that imitates telepathic solicitation, a good faith solicitation. And then I think they're engaged in the process of, and as I understand it, they're engaged in the process of trying to forcibly force down the UFO and take it into custody so that they can, again, get their hands on the technology.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for being with me. The sDm Files, episode 15. Everyone, make sure to check out all the links down in your breadbasket. We put all the things down there. We put even extra stuff in there. It's been a big couple of weeks for ufology. Come find me, x.com/shotdownmine. We'll do the thing together. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. Here we go.
When I went into CIA with that background and working with secret, it was just a natural step up to top secret. It's just more restricted information and data going to less people than secret, which is pretty broad in the US government. So that was an easy transition for me to do. And there's just a culture of secrecy within the intelligence community itself. So some of that culture rubs off on you. And so it was just a natural transition. And the ability to compartmentalize within oneself. So it was just a combination of all of these, I guess you would call it skills and tools that I used. What we call skills and tools are combined together in a phrase called tradecraft. So practicing good security tradecraft in my job became a natural part of the job and was very easy to do. The other reason is why it was easy to do is because most of my friends and the women that I've had dates with were all associated with CIA, either as officers themselves or daughters of officers, as the case might be. So we kept it all in the family. That's the way CIA likes it. So it was easy.
The UAP Files Podcast. UFOs, UAPs in 2027. Former CIA Agent John Ramirez tells all. John Ramirez is basically one of my favorites. He doesn't have a lot of screen time. He's definitely at less than 20 hours. He's probably at less than 15 hours. Maybe he's just barely starting to like bump up against like the 15-hour mark. You can watch him. He's got like 3 or 4 kind of interviews out there. He did kind of like the workhorse ufology podcast rounds right before Grush hit the scene. So probably early 2023. I doubt that there's a lot of mention of John Ramirez or a lot of video of him before 2023. Maybe at the very end of 2022 is when he showed up. But somewhere in there, and he does these, hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long podcasts. The first 3 or 4 that he was on it was a presentation that he was doing that was called something like Ufology and Navigating FOIA Basics, something like that. And it was a presentation that he was giving that was to help people involved in ufology and who were studying the topic of ufology to create really good FOIA requests to request the information that you're looking for, instead of just asking the government for videos or reports about UFOs. Instead, you could ask a really particular department, like ask the NRO about satellite activity in this area on these days, and so on. And kind of through those interviews, he would get through his basic presentation, and then he had a kind of a secondary presentation, which was about patches of special access programs and units, the patches of the units that were involved in special access programs that had to do with doing covert UAP, UFO things. And then he would talk about his job, which was to be a subject material expert on Soviet radar and aerial monitoring system platforms. And then he would kind of have like a third part of his presentation, which is about himself. And he would tell you that he has been a long-time experiencer since he was a little kid. He'll tell you I don't know if he's got 3 or 5 kind of experiences that he kind of tells you about from when he was very young, to experiences when he was kind of middle-aged and still in the CIA, of being, interviewed by aliens, medically tested by aliens, and then later in his career, just basically being shown stuff and talked to by aliens. And that he can, because of these things, that he can kind of like see aliens. He can kind of like see alien technology, right? Like because he was exposed at such a young age and continually exposed, that he can see the reptiles, he can see the lizard people. And then in the course of his official duties in the CIA and in the NRO, he was exposed to aliens and UFOs on occasion, whether it be videos or intelligent asset info, or getting picked up by an alien and taken out to the edge of the solar system and having life explained to him. So, and like I said, there's not a lot of hours of John Ramirez to go through. So you get this very quickly. You get this in just a couple of interviews. This is one of the more enjoyable Ramirez interviews because he's not giving the presentation. He's got kind of a dry, kind of academic presentation that he gives on ufology and FOIA and on the special access program unit patches, which is all very interesting, especially the unit patches and his kind of tracking of reptilian iconography throughout the U.S. government, special access programs and Air Force and CIA and NRO programs that are using these reptilian iconography all over the place. And then that he would, see alien reptiles in government every now and then that he was taken by an alien reptilian for, a ride around the solar system. And then in this interview, he talks about some of his early experiences of seeing UFOs and being taken to, medical examination facilities, basically by what he thought was his mom at the time, but it turns out was probably like a shape-shifting reptilian alien. So it's fun. It's a fun take. It's fresh and authentic and genuine, it seems like. When he was giving his workhorse kind of podcast interviews, late 2022, 2023, he was saying that everything he was saying was approved by the government, that he had a Dopser, gone through the Dopser process, had to make some changes, was told to not talk a lot about the Nazis in government and Nazis in NASA and Nazis in CIA, and definitely not going into the details of the Nazis that the Americans brought into every part and every level of American government after World War II. And there's one other kind of specific thing that he was basically told to not talk a lot about. But other than that, his presentation is approved, and that includes all of his discussion of the patches, all of his discussion of his experiences, all of his interactions with aliens, people involved with aliens, and that he was part of this early dissemination program by the government, by the intelligence community, to disseminate and get out this early information about UFOs and aliens as a precursor to controlled disclosure process, which is all very interesting. It's even more interesting in retrospect when I look back on his comments, because when he got done with like the Project Unity interview, or one of the interviews around the time of the Project Unity interview, he said at the end that, hey, this is going to be my last interview. I'm not going to do any more presentation. I'm not going to do any more interviews. I'm not going to be involved any more publicly until after the next phase of the dissemination and the controlled disclosure. And so he was saying he was like phase 2, that the phase coming after him is going to be phase 3, is going to be the start of controlled disclosure, and that once that phase is concluded, he will come back out and basically be released of all of his duties and just give interviews and talk about stuff. And I think if we look back, definitely remembering back, that he was making some kind of vague predictions kind of about controlled disclosure and UFOs and aliens and 2027. And I don't remember the specifics of what he was saying. And to me, kind of just remembering about it, it seems like he was just saying that the aliens are coming, and the intelligence community and the government and the conspiracy and the cover-up needs to come clean about some of the things before they get here in 2027, because when that happens, they won't be in a position to control any of the info anymore. So, bye, everybody. See ya after controlled disclosure starts. And then he was gone, and no one really seemed to care. Like he was big news and worth a lot of clicks and good for the analytics, in that early 2023. And then we had the arrival of David Grush. David Grush, Ross Coldhart, Ken Klippenstein, Teal Ribbon campaign. That's kind of all followed up by the official congressional hearings with David Grush, Commander Fravor, and Ryan Graves. That was very exciting, a lot of energy, and that was kind of followed by Ashton Forbes, which is then kind of followed by Lou Elizondo's book Eminent, and the re-release of kind of Lou Elizondo. He comes back on the scene as like Lou 3.0 and gives a lot of interviews, goes on a lot of podcasts. And then right around there, Grush is kind of way off the scene. Lou Elizondo 3.0 is just starting to cool off, and we're headed into some new UAP hearings. Ramirez shows back up and starts showing up on podcasts a few months ago. And he makes sure to say on basically all the podcasts that he didn't make any predictions about 2027. He wasn't saying that the aliens are coming or that disclosure was coming. And number 2, that he's not really doing the presentation anymore, and he's more willing to just kind of talk like he's a experiencer. And so all of the podcasts, all the interviews, all of his airtime since his reemergence has been kind of focused on his experiences, with aliens, seeing and seeing UFOs. And so this is the only other little tiny slice. And really, Ramirez is not considered an important or significant part of ufology by ufology. But here's another little tiny slice of ufology in UFO Twitter that actually has anything to do with aliens this week or last week or anytime recently. Right? The UAP hearings, nothing to do with aliens, except for 30-second soundbite by Eric Davis about the 4 different kinds of aliens. Right? Besides that, we get a little bit of fiction being read by Chris Ramsey, and then we get John Ramirez telling you about going to the alien hospital, getting checked out his whole life as a kid, getting into the CIA community, into the IC community, into the Department of Defense, meeting with some aliens, seeing some UFOs. I don't think I listened to this interview a couple times. It's 1 hour long. I don't think he really gets into, in this podcast, I don't even think he mentioned it, honestly, but he's mentioned in other podcasts that he's pretty sure that he's an alien. And then he will take that and explain to you that not only is he an alien, he's just a more in tune alien, but all humans are aliens. So humans are actually aliens on planet Earth. That there's one form of reptilians that are native. There's other forms that are not really native. They're related to each other. There's kind of other humans from other parts of the galaxy, Palladians, that are Nordics, that are the tall whites. I don't think he really gets into that very much. He really just kind of tells you his experiences as a little kid. And the UAP Files Podcast guy, he's asking him questions. And he's really trying to have an actual interview here. So, it's kind of like story format as far as that goes. So he doesn't get into a lot of the details about how he's an alien. We don't get much of an explanation from him, but you get the gist of his explanation is that he was exposed and monitored as a child, which made him able to communicate and see the aliens later as an adult without that causing damage and harm to him. It's 1 hour long, so it's fast and it's fun. We are getting a little bit of aliens and a little bit of UFOs in this one, so it's worth the listen. It's worth the watch.
And also, it's a bit funny because the one woman, she said she heard all this noise and there was something weird, so she went out, but she went on the wrong side of the house. She should have been on the back side of the house. So when this reporter interviewed her, she was like, "Oh, did you see it?" And no, I was on the wrong side of the house. And then she said, "Well, what are you going to do if they come back?" "I'm going to buy curtains." "Why?" "So they can't see you." Okay. Yeah, it was a bit.
I guess that's a good solution, to be honest.
Timelines between the big cases. What happens is that when you're so engaged in this topic, you really want to know, you want to figure it out, you want to talk about it, you want to have a community, but at some point you get kind of like you get there's too little information.
Yeah.
So what happens then is that you kind of start to add things that maybe you wouldn't have added if there was enough information, enough things to kind of take out. Oh, this is happening. And then it just like. So it's a lot of theories and a lot of speculation.
Vetted. 4 UFO cases revealed by President of UFO Norway, featuring Renate and Dr. Dan. This is fun watch. Normally, Vetted is kind of like covering ufology news on like a daily basis. And occasionally, every other week or so, he kind of pops something like this out, an interview with somebody. In this case, it's Dr. Dan and Renate. And so, they spend some time kind of explaining who these people are. Dr. Dan shows up all the time on Vetted and other places. He's an experiencer. I think I won't get into it, but he's around. Renate is a lady from Norway who is the president of UFO Norway. So, like, I don't know if they're like a MUFON or what exactly UFO Norway thinks they are. She explains it in there as they're a small group. They don't have a lot of money. Basically, they have enough money that they can kind of go, her and like another person from the group can go and like explore something that has to do with like a UFO sighting every other week or so, spend a couple days on it every other week or so, which, I mean, as far as the nitty gritty of individuals doing ufology goes, that sounds like that's pretty good funding, right? It doesn't sound like that's her day job though. So, anyways, why this is fun is I think that Vetted does a good job when he interviews people. Like he's interested. He's in the camp, the go along to get along camp of ufology. So he doesn't really ever criticize or debunk anyone in any way whatsoever. And so that, from a base level, makes it easy for people to share and kind of have a good time. And it's not a serious place in that he's out to get them or the things that they're saying. So it's a safe place for people to talk about ufology is with the Vetted guy. And so that's what happens here is you get it's an hour long, which is pretty long for Vetted. Even though I think, like I said, every other week or so, I'll put out maybe an hour-long interview with somebody. And in this hour, they go over kind of like 4 UFO cases that are obviously Renate there knows the ins and outs of the details, but she's very engaged with it. So it's not just an entertainment thing. At no point does she try and sell us a book or a festival, a UFO festival or con or convention or anything like that. So basically she just recounts some UFO stories from Norway that she's been able to be involved with in herself personally in the investigation side of things, but that because she's a ufology person, steeped in ufology and paying attention, very interested in all things ufology and UFOs and aliens, that she found these cases really interesting and they're local to her, and so she was able to go to the places and talk to the people, which is pretty exciting. And kind of like a dry kind of European way, she explains that there's not a lot of ufology when you're doing ufology in real time. Yeah, she's got a hotline that's getting reports of lights, and it's got 2 reports a day average of things that basically, in the most part, turn out to be kind of lights on the horizon or whatever, balloons, benign, prosaic things that are easy to kind of explain and not that interesting when you hear someone kind of explain it. And through that, they kind of find a couple a month that they can kind of go and look into a little bit closer. But even in most of those cases, it kind of turns out to be kind of boring, not very interesting, not very UFO and alien-like things. And so on occasion, they get to go check out some stuff that seems to be kind of a little bit more exciting in the ufology side of things. And that, here's 4 that she can talk about and think of right here. And so that's what they do. They talk about those 4 experiences. They're kind of typical ufology. Vetted says, that they're not typical, and I don't really know what he meant by that, unless he's just like sensationalizing. Like they kind of do seem to be like these are the stories that you would find if you were going to listen to like a half hour long ufology serial, or if you're going to watch, the next Bruce Sabel show for 30 minutes every Friday night, is you get these 4 UFO stories, lights that come close and then change into an alien, or, UFO in the distance that lands and leaves, burn marks on the ground, etc. I'd say that there's like a maybe in here that they're kind of describing aliens a little bit, but mostly they're talking about UFOs. And so, it's my criticism of ufology lately, because we don't talk there's very little talk about aliens, ever. People seeing aliens, interacting with aliens, any evidence of aliens in kind of modern ufology. Mostly what we get is, descriptions and videos and pictures of crafts and lights and orbs. So for an hour, for UFO stories, it's pretty darn good. It's a fun watch. Fun and fast. Get at it, everyone.
The question is, do we have recovered UFOs in our custody? The answer is yes. Am I convinced that Lou Elizondo, as the head of the ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Project, came to know that to be true? Yes. And he has stated that now. He has stated it publicly. It doesn't have to really depend upon whether he told me or whether I told somebody else that he did. He has testified now openly to the House Oversight Committee that he knows that it's true that we have these UFOs, and he knows that to his own knowledge. In fact, I do not and have not represented Lou Elizondo in any of his commercial endeavors. I didn't represent him in connection with his book contract. I haven't represented him in connection with the video the big documentary that they've just done called The Age of Disclosure. I don't know what type of remuneration, if any, Lou has gotten from any of those activities.
Marwa EIDiwiny. ETs, Government Secrets, and Hidden Agreements. Danny Sheehan. So this is not required ufology. It is good ufology. It's an excellent summary. Danny Sheehan is a definite ufology resource, but his place in ufology in the modern, current tiers of ufology is a gatekeeper, right? He's worked on and created the ufology movement, Citizens for Disclosure, and recently he left all of the other kind of gatekeeper groups, like his involvement in SALT and Soul and you name it, because he kind of created and launched his own gatekeeper organization. I think they call themselves the New Paradigm. Let's see if it's in here. It's not in here, man. It's like the New Paradigm Institute. I think that's what they call themselves. And so the New Paradigm Institute is kind of like a copy of Soul. Maybe it's even kind of it's another gatekeeper level right above the Citizens for Disclosure, which is like maybe Citizens for Disclosure is a fundraising, crowdsourcing kind of concept more than anything else, even though it kind of sells itself as kind of like a ufology community. So anyways, in the gatekeeper organizations like SALT, and even like Greer's cult, they do this thing, and Ross does this now too. So it's every week, every other week, once a month, they kind of have one of their own
internal people and up and comer, like this gal Marwa EIDiwiny, who's running her own podcast, do an hour or 2 hour question and answer with one of the guys who's on the board of the gatekeeper organization, or the main guy like Stephen Greer. So they all kind of do this thing where they have a softball interview with one of their own people that they kind of dress up as, not a softball internally produced thing. And so kind of with all that kind of mean, nasty criticism being said, it is a good 2 hours of Danny Sheehan, because he kind of talks about everything. Talks about the Big Bang, talks about love, talks about having no regrets in his whole life, probably mentions every single other UFO celebrity that you could possibly think of multiple times, and a lot of the ways that they interact and layer with each other and on top of each other. So if you can stand it, it's a great 2 hour interview with Danny Sheehan. And he talks about really all the ins and outs. He's been everyone's lawyer. He's been Stephen Greer's lawyer. He's been Lou Elizondo's lawyer. He's been involved with everyone and anyone. He's on a first name basis with everyone and anyone. David Grush, Jake Barber, Matt Brown. I don't know the exact reason, but I suspect that the reason that he has bad blood or nothing but kind of negative things to say about Skywatcher is because Skywatcher and the people involved in Skywatcher are his competition, right? The New Paradigm Institute and SALT and Soul and Skywatcher and Greer Camp and Corbell Camp, they're all fighting over the same pool of money from the United States government that they're all trying to get. And it kind of seemed like through 2023, 2024, that these gatekeeper groups were kind of banding together and sort of concentrating themselves into the Soul Foundation, because they really thought that with Grush and the UAP hearings and maybe the new government, the new American government, the Trump administration coming in, the turnover in Congress, that there was about to be a whole lot of money available for groups like Soul. And it turns out that didn't work out. A lot of these guys, I don't think that any of them seriously were expecting the things that they were saying that they were seriously expecting, because none of them seemed to be serious students of the American Congress and how it works. And so a lot of them were saying, and every person in every camp, Corbell Camp, Greer Camp, Ross Coulthard, Danny Sheehan, Carl Nell, Gary Nolan, Brandon Fugel, anyone that you were talking to, they were all expecting the UAP Schumer rounds legislation to become law. And it's pretty obvious to anyone who has ever read a law before or watched the process of something becoming a law in modern times in the American Congress, that piece of legislation was never actually written to succeed and become a law. And so that reality dawned on all these folks as 2024 played out, and then the election and the results of the election over the last 6 months or so, that the UAP Schumer rounds legislation is not going to become law anytime soon. None of the elements included in that are going to become a reality anytime soon, and that the big pile of money that they were all kind of eyeballing doesn't really exist. At least not today, not currently. There's always a big pile of money to be eyeballed in Washington and Congress, but it doesn't look like any of it's going to these ufology gatekeeper organizations anytime soon. And so the last 6 months we've seen them kind of decentralizing. They dissolved their alliance. And so now we have 6 months later, we have some very distinct kind of gatekeeper organizations running around in different directions, all competing for a much, much, much smaller pile of money. And probably none of them are going to get the pile of money. If any of them get any money, they're all going to get little tiny bits of the money, which is still significant amounts of money to us normal people that aren't involved in Congress or government. But at the same time, what that has given us is now we have the New Paradigm Institute, Danny Sheehan, basically talking shit about Jake Barber and Skywatcher. And so in here, he has nothing but good things to say about everyone else, but Skywatcher, he has nothing but kind of bad things to say. And his audience is like ufology believers, because he's saying, look, these guys are trying to bring down UFOs so they can capture them and take them for their technology. And they're not inviting them on good faith terms, like when a bunch of CE5 people get together on the beach and call a UFO just so they can look at it. No, they're using, evil technology to pretend that's an invitation, a psychic invitation, so that they can force the craft down and take its technology. So he's really trying to even kind of like reach into the audience and convince audience members that he's one of the good guy ufologists compared to the Skywatcher guys who are kind of like bad guy ufologists. So that's interesting. The amount of intersections going on in this 2-hour video, which I don't know. I don't know who Marwa is. Never seen her before. But I think that this is a production being put on by the New Paradigm Institute and the Citizens for Disclosure movement to showcase Danny Sheehan and their group, their camp, their gatekeeper organization, as they go into probably the biggest ufology event of the year, Contact in the Desert, at the end of May. So they're kind of preparing the battlefield, so to speak. And so, like I said, with all that kind of criticism aside, it's a great 2-hour interview because they touch on probably every person, every topic inside of ufology. Of course, they kind of skirt around the heebie-jeebie stuff. And at the same time, you get some inner workings of how Danny Sheehan's been kind of personally, intimately involved in a lot of these same ufology celebrities' paths along the way, specifically the Elizondo that he says a lot. He spends some significant time in here promoting the Disclosure documentary that we don't know when it's going to come out, but it will at some point. And so I'd say anyone who's anyone in ufology is out there saying pretty much, unless they're in the extreme skeptic or the debunker camps, not only is it a big deal, but it's a big deal. So, I would say it's not required for like the advanced students of ufology that are as interested as I am in like the intersections of the ufology camps. It's definitely something you need to take the time to go through, because the intersections in all directions are apparent and really, really fun.